a very special guest by the name Seema Dhanak. And Seema is a homeless case worker for local authority, and she's been doing that for the past 15 years. So Seema, I don't want to be your mouthpiece, okay? So I want you to tell our viewers who you are, what you do, and also the impact that you're making in the society in regards to what you are doing. So now the floor is yours and you have all the time, okay?
Great, no problem. So, so yeah, you've introduced me beautifully there, you know, very much in a nutshell. So yes, 15 years of experience working within local authorities. I'm a homeless caseworker and I specialised in lots of domestic abuse cases throughout different local authorities throughout the years. And what has given me the knowledge and the understanding, firstly, of what domestic abuse is and what services are available to help. What I have found in the last, particularly sort of 5 or 6 years, with the growth of social media platforms and the growth of social media groups, is that there's a lot more domestic abuse out there than what we think. And wow. From the perspective of a homeless caseworker who has specifically always worked with, families that have come from very deprived backgrounds, people who are dependent on benefits, we very rarely ever get to see the other side of domestic abuse from, women or men who are suffering from independent people who are not dependent on the state, and they're not dependent on benefits. They are homeowners. They're career women like you and I. Some of these women and men have been accountants, lawyers, solicitors, IT professionals, very highly paid, independent, financially independent individuals who have suffered with domestic abuse. So I think over the last few years, it's opened up a huge amount of sort of conversation about domestic abuse and the impact of it on the wider community. So I've made it my mission and my life's purpose to spread more awareness on domestic abuse as a whole. Okay. Firstly, to encourage those who are suffering to use the appropriate professional services. Not every professional services is going to be right, but there will always be an appropriate professional service that can help you through the process of trying to separate from an abusive partner. So I've tried to make it my life's mission and my purpose. I do that through these sort of platforms, through awareness, through talking to victims of abuse and empowering them with emotional and support and signposting and knowledge. But I also run training courses on domestic abuse awareness, which are targeted at people who actually want to assist and support someone who might be suffering with domestic abuse.
Wow, that's a whole lot of work that you're doing right there, Yeah, so with all this that you're doing, running, training and everything, what have you seen? Have you seen people come over, to speak up and, let you know what they're going through?
Yes, I think, a lot of social taboos are breaking now. And wow. I think because, I do feel that because domestic abuse is high on the agenda in the media at the moment as well. Mm-hmm. Lockdown has also sort of spoken about domestic abuse and the increase that lockdown actually had, the impact that it had on people being stuck in abusive relationships during lockdown. I think more and more people have come forward and actually said, you know what, I'm suffering with this level of abuse, I need help. And the interesting thing is that it isn't just physical abuse that's coming out. Yeah. People are talking about the impact of psychological abuse, emotional abuse, systemic and financial abuse, spiritual and cultural abuse. These are all things that are perhaps kind of swept under the carpet and not talked about as much. And so a lot of different types of abuse have come out during this lockdown period.
Wow, that is pretty good, because a lot of people, it's like a shame for you to come out and tell people, even to tell your very closest friend that, you know what, I'm going through abuse, it might be emotional, physical, it's like a shame, people don't want to come out. So I'm really glad that people are, coming out right now to tell the world what they're going through. So that is really good. And what you're doing a great job, so thank you so much for that. Thank you. So just for our viewers to know, today our topic is going to be based on domestic violence domestic abuse. So we're going to be touching a lot on it. And also Seema, because she works, she's been working with local authority, and she deals with domestic violence victims. So you are going to provide, you're going to be providing us information, like resources that people can, who they can call when they are in this kind of a situation, So like I said, we're going to be talking about domestic abuse, and also we're going to be talking about marriage, because I know that you have been in this thing called marriage institution for a long time, you understand? So yeah, so and we're gonna be talking about that. So Seema, my first question to you is, I got a letter from one of my audience. The person, she wishes to remain anonymous. So this is what she said. She says that her husband abuses her. At first, right, it was a physical abuse, you understand? And the physical abuse involved like using a belt to beat her, punching her, and also beating her so bad. And it got to a stage whereby one day they were really fighting, and the lady, she has to call the attention of one of the family member. So one of the family member was able to talk to the guy. You understand? So maybe during the talk and everything like that, the guy had a reflection and realized that what he was doing wasn't good. You understand? And really, from her letter, she said the physical abuse stopped. You understand? And when it stopped, she was like giving, saying thank you to God. You understand? So before she could finish saying thank you, another form of abuse came into picture, which is like sense deprivation, and also what is this thing called what is it called, passive aggressive behavior came in.
Right.
You understand? So and she was already thanking God that, you know what, okay, I don't experience physical abuse anymore. But when all this came in, she was like, now I am lost. I don't know what to do right now. So and also, and this what is it called, I'm just trying to open up the letter right now. So she said the behavior was so bad, and this makes her feel, especially the passive aggressive behavior was really bad, because when it happened, you understand, it makes her feel isolated, you understand, because the partner isn't talking to her, you understand, so she's left all by herself on her own, you understand. So and she the thing is, she's a faith-based person, like a spiritual person, and she believes that the partner doesn't know what he's doing, you understand. So she decided to, to be like, I'm gonna believe in my faith, and just believe that one day this guy is going to stop this abusive behavior. Look at it now, it doesn't inflict physical abuse on me anymore, but what he's doing right now, if he could stop the physical abuse, I'm pretty sure that maybe very soon it might stop the passive aggressive behavior, and also the sex deprivation. That might stop later on in life. So and the question that I want to ask you right now is, why do people abuse other people?
Okay, so there's been lots of studies on this, on what sort of leads a person to abuse another, because let's face it, no one is born an abuser, and I think it's safe to say that when we're all born, we're all a blank canvas. We know nothing but love, and as we grow up, we become characters of the lifestyles that we have seen.
Yes.
So with that, I want to talk about learned behaviors. So there have been studies that actually do support this, where learned behavior is one of the main reasons a person can be abusive, but it's also one of the main reasons why a person also tolerates abuse. So, for example, because I've been in the industry now for 15 years. I've seen, sort of looked at child protection documents that come through, where you look at a certain person's history, and you're looking at a person's history from, for example, assessments that might have been done by social services from a young age of, say, 5 or 6, And it clearly states that they have been witnessed their parents fighting and their mum being a victim of domestic abuse. And then that same pattern can sometimes continue because it's almost normalized behavior for them. There are cultural attributes as well that in certain societies, for example, in some, particularly like in the Irish traveller community, where power and control is exerted through aggression and physical violence, usually in particular on women. It's considered as being sort of machoistic, it's considered as being a part of a male character, it's considered as being a masculine energy. And so some of it is learnt behaviors and some of it is kind of social and cultural attributes. So, and unless a person, what concerns me in the story that you've just told me today is I love the fact that your viewer is a faith-based person, because faith and hope gives you everything.
Yes.
But what I would also like to say is believe in the power of knowledge at the same time as well. That you can only change a person if you're willing to work with them on a knowledge-based level. And what that means is that if this person is willing to accept that their behavior is abusive, the same way that in your viewer's story that they accepted that the physical abuse was wrong, if they were to understand the impact of their passive aggressive nature, of the sexual deprivation, and I'll touch on what type of abuses these are shortly as well, if they are to accept that these type of behaviors are not conducive to a healthy relationship and they are actually abusive and narcissistic behavioral traits towards their partner, if a person is willing to work on those characteristic traits, then through counseling, through psychotherapy, through things like cognitive behavioral therapy, and more importantly, that willingness to want to change, then I do believe that she does stand some hope, and that he can change. I want to touch on it's very common for this sort of cycle to happen, where you've got an individual who is aggressive and violent to start with, and then there could be either an intervention from a family member or the police or whoever it is that makes them realize they cannot get away with such behavior. And then that follows with, okay, fine, I can't get away with physical violence anymore, but then another type of violence, another type of abuse rears its ugly head. And like you say, you've got psychological and emotional abuse. Sexual deprivation is actually a form of sexual abuse in itself.
Wow.
So that falls under sexual abuse, depriving somebody of intimacy, depriving somebody of physical comfort in what should be a seemingly healthy relationship is also a form of abuse. So that is something that she needs to kind of shine some light on with her partner, and try and. It's difficult to be vulnerable to a person who is causing you harm. So if she can't shine the light onto those subjects with him, then she perhaps needs to do it with a psychotherapist or a friend who can then sort of help her just really sort of sort the wood from the trees with that. The other type of abuse that is often noticeable afterwards, after sort of violent abuse stops, is psychological gaslighting. Gaslighting is basically where, a partner sort of will say things to make you actually question your own sanity.
Exactly.
It could be as simple as you left the bathroom light on, and you're saying no, you didn't, but he's making you believe that you did, to the point where you then begin to question your own sanity. And so gaslighting becomes something that is very apparent afterwards as well. Abuse generally is about power and control.
Wow.
It's about who has the power on the day. And when I say that abuse is about power and control, it is often not always the case that only one person has power and control on the day. There are relationships where domestic abuse is 50-50, 60-40, 80-20. And so when that is the case, even the victim of abuse can become a perpetrator of abuse as well. And so, you know, these cycles can continue. There is some psychological work, there's some psychological sort of research that has been done, and there is what is known as the cycle of abuse, which is talked about a lot in the field of abuse. And the cycle of abuse is basically, you've got this tension building phase where, you know, the things are difficult between the relationship, but they haven't exploded into an incident just yet. And then the incident, then, you know, it leads to an incident of either abuse or an argument or some form of abuse takes place. And then there is a honeymoon period where, you know, there's a lot of remorse and regret and, you know, like sort of apologetic manipulation through apologies. He could end up sort of, you know, crying and asking for forgiveness and showering her with affection and showering her with financial incentives, buying her flowers, jewelry, and the rest of it. And then that kind of just brings about the next phase of the cycle of abuse, which is the calm phase, where then everything is fine and, you know, there's a sense of normality. And, you know, it's the period between the honeymoon period and the calm that most people look out for and feel hungry for in a relationship, especially when it's an abusive relationship. So, you know, that whole period, the cycle of abuse period, can sometimes last a day. It can happen once a day. It can happen 3 or 4 times in a day. It could even happen maybe once a year. But that cycle of abuse is the one thing that that is common in all abusive relationships, that all of them will have that actual pattern.
Okay. Wow. But you know, and you know what I also heard? I heard that you know, domestic abuse is caused by the victim provoking the abusers in some ways. So do you think that when you provoke someone, that gives you the ground, you know, to inflict pain on the other person? Do you think so?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think we all need to. I think every human being has the capacity to both be loving and be harmful at the same time. And we need to always question our ability to react to a situation rather than blaming it on the actions of another. Provocation is something that we will see in our everyday lives, whether we're walking down the street and somebody, you know, says something inappropriate to us. You know, we will perhaps be faced by family members who perhaps might say something distasteful to us. We might be in the workplace where a colleague says something that we're not happy with.
Exactly.
My example that I often give is that if you have an individual that does not act violently and aggressively in a boardroom during a meeting because they're working, then why would they react that way outside of work?
Exactly, yeah.
It isn't fair to blame an individual for provocation. What I will say though is there is a flip side to that coin as well, and I can understand where that thought process comes from, because where we talked about some abusive relationships actually being 50-50 or 60-40, where actually they're both quite abusive to each other, then yes, I can appreciate that there may be some arguments that have gotten to a stage where they have provoked each other. And again, this is where they both need to work on themselves. They both need to take time out and walk away from the situation and think about how they are reacting to each other and how they are behaving towards each other.
Wow. Okay.
If you both reciprocate with each other with love and compassion, then that's what you'll both get in return. I genuinely believe that.
Yeah.
But yes, there are cases where I could believe that they have both provoked each other.
Yeah. Okay, and also you mentioned that most abusers, right, they want to be in control of the other person. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, why would you be in a relationship and want to control the other person? What do you think could be going on in their mind? Why do you want to control other people?
Some people are genuinely feel the need to have control over everything.
Wow.
You know, whether it's their life, their finances, the food that's on the table, the color of the
Wow.
walls, everything. You know, and relationships are not about control. Relationships are about growing together and getting the best out of each other.
Yes.
And yes, there are every couple has its strengths and weaknesses. And I use this example quite often, okay, that my area of strength might be sort of cooking a nice meal. And yes, I'm being rather stereotypical by saying this. Um, and my husband's area of strength is numbers and handling the bills and the money
Okay.
and the rest of it. So,
Mm,
you know, am I a victim of domestic abuse just because I let him get on with the finances and I get on with the cooking? No, that's a
mm,
shared understanding. Am I
exactly.
being abused because he doesn't cook the meals? Well, actually, no. He now has begun to cook his meals.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's. I think we need to understand that there are some things that we can control for each other and work really well. But
Yeah.
you cannot, in any relationship, expect to control a person's every thought process.
Mm,
You cannot control how your partner feels about something. You cannot control their emotions. You
no,
cannot control their thought processes. You
exactly.
can work together to try and align your thought processes, but in the event that they don't align, it's not the end of the world. You don't need to argue over it. You
Mm,
just need to agree to disagree. My
yes.
husband's favorite color may be blue, mine's red, but that doesn't give him a reason to be abusive towards me just because we have a disagreement in color.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And those are just some very, very simple examples. But when we think about some very sort of real life issues, like for example, couples that have married outside their culture, two different religions that have married into each other,
Mm,
um, even sort of, for example, my husband and I, he grew up in East Africa, and I was born in the UK. So we've had very different upbringings as well. So when you've got those differences, even if you are so similar, you are going to have some differences in the way that you were brought up. You're going to have some differences in your opinions. You're going to have some differences in the type of lifestyles that you want to lead. And
yes.
a healthy relationship will bring out the best in each other rather than argue over what one person wants over the other.
Mm, mm. Wow. Wow. Okay, well, thank you so much for that. Let me go to my second question. You see, I try to read a lot of book. You know, I try to read as much book as I can. And I was
Good.
reading a book about domestic abuse one day, and I read that abused children, you understand, they may become abusive adults because abuse is like you said earlier, it's a learned behavior. You understand? So I want to find out how accurate is it, because the thing is someone can change. You understand? Someone might grow up in an alcoholic family. You understand? And you realize
Mm,
that your mom, your dad is an alcoholic. You understand? And you take a stand and just be like, you know what? Even though my mom or my dad, they are one of them is
mm,
alcoholic or something like that, and I don't want to be like that when I grow up. So I'm sure that once the child is aware of that, they can change. But in the book that I read, it says abused children may, even I know they use the word may become abusive adults because it's a learned behavior. So I want to find out to you, and
mm.
with you being, you know, you work with a lot of domestic abuse victims. What is your,
Mm.
how accurate do you think this statement is?
I think it's actually very accurate. I do think it's accurate. At the same time, I would also agree with people who say that not all children who grow up in abusive environments become abusive. I
Yeah.
think it will either make you, I think it, I see a lot of children projecting aggression at school as a result of seeing aggression at home.
Mm,
And that's where it's usually that's usually where the first lot of alarm bells start ringing, is when they start acting up at school.
Mm.
And it does impact on their learning as well. So, you know, when you start to see that their learning is impacted, that they are acting up with children at school, and that if they're not getting their way, then they start to exert aggression and violence towards another child at school, or even a teacher at school. So those questions need to be asked. I do know that a lot of a lot of work is being done by some very talented social workers and family intervention teams, where they work with families where the children may be psychologically impacted by abuse in a relationship at home. So, you know, again, sort of child counselling, adolescent counselling, you know, sort of working with them to get them to understand what healthy relationships are, what healthy boundaries are, and actually, rather than pointing the finger at the parents and saying, well, actually, you know, it's the parents' fault because they're abusive towards each other,
Mm.
it's a case of working together with them as a whole family unit. And that means involving the children and talking about how it makes them feel when they see the aggression and violence between the parents.
Okay.
I think that there's two sides of this coin, you know, where on one hand, yes, there is always a risk that a child that's grown up in an abusive environment may actually sort of turn out to be abusers themselves. But then that doesn't mean to say that every child will. There can be work done either by the parent who is their primary carer, or by professionals that are sort of, you know, counsellors or psychotherapists who can work with children. Those are all services that can be accessed via your school. So even if you are going to a state school, even if you are somebody who has no recourse to public funds, these are things that you can still access, and you can ask for them at your school through social services.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good. Let me go to the next question now. I I learned that you know, emotional abuse is very bad as well. So I want to find out, how does emotional abuse affect a person? Because I read that emotional abuse can cause nervous breakdown. So I want to find out how accurate is this, and will it be possible for you to explain it? Because the thing is, emotional abuse, no one knows about it. You understand? You're the one. Maybe it's just maybe the person is using a derogatory word towards you. You understand? Maybe calling you all sort
Yeah,
of nasty names, but it's not
yeah, yeah,
showing on you. You understand? You
yeah,
got, your body is not showing, so it's totally different from physical abuse. So how can
yeah.
this affect a person?
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. Emotional abuse is very, very damaging to an individual's confidence. Emotional abuse can consist of not just derogatory terms and the gaslighting that we talked about earlier, where you're led to believe something and you end up questioning your own sanity.
Mm.
It can also be sort of, you know, control and coercion, where, you know, like you're forced to act and behave in a certain way because that is what they are trying to get you to do.
Yeah.
It can also be you know, the sort of manipulation and isolation, and isolating you away from your own friends and your family so that you don't talk to anyone else.
Yeah.
Those type of abuses, yes, I would agree that if the victim of abuse does not seek out help, it can not only cause a nervous breakdown, it can also lead to suicide.
Wow.
It can lead to very, very poor mental health. It can lead to a person's confidence being, you know, it's like a slow poison where it chips away at your confidence very, very gradually. I've seen perfectly sort of, you know, strong, financially independent career women who say that they won't leave their partners because they just don't know what they would do with themselves.
Mm.
You know, they've become so accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and they've become so accustomed to being controlled, that actually the idea of facing the world on their own is just too much for them. You know, their depressive disorders that they suffer as a result of the domestic abuse and the emotional abuse can be so damaging that it will lead to lack of motivation of them actually doing something about it to try and get help for the abuse.
Mm.
So, you know, yes, it does. It can really cause some long-term damage to a person's confidence.
Wow.
Um, Emotional and psychological abuse is one of those things that even after a family have separated, it can still continue, whether it's through parenting arrangements, whether it's through, you know, the community and the culture that you live in. For example, if you live in quite a small community like myself, with you know, the particular type of Asian community that I come from, the Asian community itself is huge, but we all have our own sort of divisions as well.
Yeah.
And we live in quite a small community where everyone knows everyone.
Mm.
And so, you know, that emotional and psychological abuse can continue even after the relationship has ended, because you've got, you know, gossip culture and you know, like, what will people say, and the embarrassment side of it, and actually being embarrassed by your partner in public, you know, as a result of a separation, for example. So, you know, yes, emotional abuse can completely cause a nervous breakdown. It can cause suicide. There was a study that was done by the NHS. This is actually sort of listed in the book written by Harpal. He's co-authored the book The First Slap, and he writes about it in there that Asian women who suffer with domestic abuse are 40% more likely to have suicidal ideation.
Wow.
And that just goes to show that even if the abuse is not physical, if it's just emotional, the impact on one's mental health is huge.
Wow. You know what? I want to go back to the letter that I read at the start of this show, and because, like I said, the lady that sent me the letter, she said there was physical abuse before, but now it's emotional abuse. So I know you've touched a lot about, you know, you've touched a little bit about, you know, the person had to believe in the power of knowledge and not just believe in saying that, you know, I'm a faith-based person. You understand? So I want you to reiterate, just say what you think could happen, because the thing is, the excuses that this lady has is, well, my husband is taking care of me and he loves his children. You understand? It's only like maybe when he's mad, that's when he start, you know, dishing out this passive aggressive behavior or self-deprivation or something like that. So, and as long as he's taking care of his children and also is not inflicting physical abuse on me, there's nothing wrong with my body or something like that. In your heart, what can you say to this kind of person who still believe that, you know what, he can change or she can change?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the fact that a person can stop inflicting violent behavior and very much, you know, like flip a switch like that and say, right, I'm not going to be violent towards a person anymore, shows that this person has capacity to A, understand what they're doing, and B, actually really implement positive change.
Yes.
What I will say is that what you have highlighted is a very, very common phenomenon amongst victims of abuse or survivors of abuse, whichever way you want to look at it, to defend the perpetrator. Okay, you know, even recently I sort of had somebody mention that, oh, he doesn't lift a finger on me though, you know, he doesn't, he looks after me, he gives me money, he does this, he does that. Right, but it doesn't alter the fact that he's being derogatory towards you. It doesn't alter the fact that he is using terminology that is making you feel bad. And it doesn't alter the fact that control and coercive behavior is being exerted on you. It doesn't alter the fact that you are being isolated away from your friends and your family, because he knows, or she knows, whichever way around you want to look at it, that this level of abusive behavior is not acceptable either. So by isolating you away from your support networks, that then means that you're less likely to tell somebody that this is what else I'm going through. Therefore, he remains in control of that relationship once again. And again, these are not healthy relationship traits. So my advice is, if you want to read up more and understand what emotional abuse is, have a look on websites such as Women's Aid and Refuge. They are an absolute oracle of knowledge when it comes to domestic abuse. It will even almost give you like checklists that you can look at, which will actually sort of help you to understand whether or not the type of relationship you have at home is abusive or not. Also, have a look at something called the wheel of abuse, which is slightly different to cycle of abuse. The wheel of abuse actually, the only way that I can describe it is that it's similar to a color wheel. Okay, so on a color wheel, you've got all the spectrums of shades, and on the wheel, the domestic abuse wheel, you've got all the behavior patterns and how each one interlinks with each other. So when you start to look at, this is where I say knowledge is power. Okay, and so if you can equip yourself with the knowledge of what is going on in your relationship at home, then you have the opportunity to bring this to the table and say, look, I feel this way. Do you feel that your behavior towards me is inappropriate based on what I have read professionally? Because I feel that our relationship fits into this spectrum of abuse. If there is no scope for that level of communication to happen, then you know that it's unlikely that this person is going to be willing to change. Okay, because in order to change from being somebody who is an abuser to not be an abuser, they need to be willing to let go of that power and control. Which is something that a lot of people don't want to do.
Wow. Thank you so much for that information. Let me go to my other question. You see, Seema, deeply, I strongly would like domestic abuse to stop. And I want to find out, in your mind, will you say the same? And if so, let's say the Prime Minister of United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, is here right now. And he says, you know what, Seema, I am assigning you the role of domestic violence advocate. And because I want this systemic abuse to stop, Seema, what exactly can you do, especially with the cases of abuse so rampant? And is it possible to break the circle of abuse? And if so, if you have the power, if you are being put in that position, and also with the people, with the amount of people that you've worked with the victims, Seema, what will you do to break this, to help or to aid in breaking the cycle of this abuse?
Okay, so what I would say is education is the first thing that I would like to bring in. We should be talking about healthy relationships at school with children, so that they understand what healthy relationships are at each age. You know, from the age of 5, understanding what a healthy relationship between siblings, parent, child, grandparents, aunts and uncles, getting them to understand physical abuse, sexual abuse from as young an age as possible in terms of what is appropriate for them age appropriately. So that's the first thing. Then the education shouldn't stop there. It should continue into adulthood, and even as, it doesn't matter how old you are, we never stop learning. So that awareness and that education needs to continue. The second thing that I would want to look at is criminalizing abusive behavior and making it easier for the criminal justice system to bring justice for those victims of domestic abuse who actually want to see justice happen. There should be a zero tolerance policy to those who try to witness intimidate and manipulate their victims of abuse into withdrawing statements. And that, when we look at the statistics, out of 2 million reported incidents of domestic abuse, very few of them actually, in fact I would go as far as saying about 30 to 40% of them only receive criminal convictions. And that's a very small number. And if you're not wanting to go through the legal system and you don't necessarily want justice in the form of the heavy hand of the law, then what about rehabilitation? What can we do to work with perpetrators of abuse? Can we work with them on an educational basis? Can we work with them on a therapeutic basis? Can we bring in mandatory counselling and psychotherapy for those people who have been perpetrators of domestic abuse, so that they learn, that they're able to learn what their behaviour is, and hopefully actually work towards some progressive plans in actually changing that. systemic abuse is a big issue, and the only way that systemic abuse will stop is that if the system is tighter. So, for example, one of the things that holds people in relationships that are abusive is the fact that if you are a homeowner, you can't get legal aid.
Really?
Yeah. So if you're a homeowner, even if you're not working, you can't get legal aid.
Wow.
And that keeps a lot of, for example, women can be caregivers to children. They may have given up their careers. They may have been stopped from working through the control and coercive behaviour of their partner. That's another form of financial abuse. But then they're also being systemically abused, because actually the courts won't allow them to access the partner's wealth. It won't allow them access to legal aid so that they can actually press charges or apply for a separation, and so that, you know, the financial burden of actually going through a divorce and a separation for a woman who is financially independent is far worse than it is for somebody who actually is entitled to legal aid.
Wow.
It's ironic that as a perpetrator of domestic abuse who is on the cusp of being convicted of a crime such as assault, beating, GBH, grievous bodily harm, or actual bodily harm, they are automatically entitled to a legal aid solicitor because it's criminal law. But because divorce and settlements and separation is not considered as being a criminal matter, it's considered as being a family and civil matter, these victims of domestic abuse don't have the luxury of having a legal aid solicitor. And so the only way systemic abuse will stop there is if you make legal aid available to individuals of, to victims of domestic abuse, irrespective of whether they own their home or not.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Well, I didn't even know that, if you have your own house, you cannot get a free access to legal aid. I'm just finding that out right now. So, well, thank you
The
for
answer to
providing
that is, the answer to that is yes, going via a solicitor, you won't get the legal aid, but that doesn't mean to say that there's no help at all. What I will say is that there are independent domestic violence advocates who have actually got the skills to be able to apply for things like non-molestation orders and occupation orders, so that your partner is ordered to leave the accommodation that you're staying in, even if you own it, so that you can be legally separated, and that can be done. That's the other side to it, that if you can't access legal aid, then you can always access an independent domestic advice advocate. But at the same time, an independent domestic abuse advocate can only do so much. They're not going to be able to represent you as much as a solicitor can. The work they do is so valuable in terms of the support and assistance that they give you. However, they're never going to be as legally trained as a solicitor is.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. I wanted to ask about types of abuse, but we've already mentioned it, so I'm just going to jump to the next question right now, because we know there is physical abuse, sexual abuse, and all the stuff. So we already know about that. So, so my next question is, when a child has been, abused while growing up, either through the parents or any other forms of abuse, I want to find out when they become an adult, does this have an effect on them when they become an adult?
Yeah, I think it has an effect on them, either in the sense that their own relationships, their perspective of what a healthy relationship could be different to those who haven't grown up in an abusive environment. I think it can lead to insecurities and lack of confidence in being able to manage relationships. And we talked about it earlier, that if perhaps an individual has grown up in an abusive relationship environment themselves, then there is always that risk that they may become an abuser, or they may become a victim of abuse because they've seen it. The other side of learnt behavior is learning to tolerate abuse. It's sometimes easier to tolerate abuse than it is to escape it. And so I think it can go both ways. That they'll either have their own inhibitions and insecurities about relationships themselves. There's the risk that they could end up becoming an abuser themselves, or there's the risk that they may end up attracting somebody who is abusive and tolerating it, because that in itself is also a learned behavior.
Okay. You know what? I was actually listening to an interview you had with Shook. I forgot her name anyway. So you guys were talking about karma. You understand? So because I think some people believes that when you do evil to some people, later on in life, you're just gonna reap whatever it is. I mean, I don't know if that is karma anyway. You know, yeah. So you're going to reap it, or you're gonna get the reward or whatever you do to other people. So some people believe that when someone abuses you, maybe you have abused someone in the past. Maybe that is why that happened to you. What is your? I've already heard you from the interview, but I want you to just tell us more. What is your view on this, and do you think this is karma?
So that conversation came about when we were talking about cultural and spiritual abuse. And as karma isn't something that just Hindus believe in. I think it's a universal thing where what goes around comes around is a universal thought. The idea that you must have done something either in your previous life or this life to deserve being abused is something that I really want to rubbish and dispel the myth around that. Okay. Nobody deserves to be abused, irrespective of what their history is, irrespective of nobody even knows if this whole reincarnation thing is real. Let's face it, nobody's been there and come back from the dead and said, yes, I reincarnated. There may be some conspiracy theory stories out there about that, but let's face it, it's one person's word against another, and that we don't actually know if those theories have any substance in them. So when you put it in that context, you cannot turn around to a victim of abuse and say, well, it must be something you did.
Yes.
You mustn't ever victim blame. And this I'm saying from a perspective of, if you run your own women's groups, if you're part of a religious institution, you are in a place of religious power, or cultural power even, because you're part of a community, do not victim shame. Because there is absolutely no excuse. We spoke about this earlier when we talked about provocation, that you can't be held responsible for the way somebody else acts. And in the same way, like the whole conversation about spiritual abuse and cultural abuse came about where, I have friends who have been through domestic abuse relationships, where a person in a religious institute has told them that this is your karma. You must have done something in your previous life, and that's why you're being abused now. So in a nutshell, if you read between those lines, he's basically saying, well, this is your fault somewhere along the lines, and actually you're just going to have to put up with it, because you have to allow the karma to take its place. And again, I just want to rubbish that whole thought process completely and say that no one deserves to experience abuse. No one knows what another person's history is or what their past is. Let's live in today and be compassionate and loving towards our family members and in our relationships, because there is no excuse, no karma, no sort of history that excuses abusive behavior.
Yeah, I'm really with you on that, because the thing is, when we keep saying that, maybe because it's karma taking its place on you, is that we're giving the perpetrator a bigger hand or upper hand to continue to do what they're doing. You understand? So, like you said, no matter what someone does, especially to your partner, no matter what they do, I don't think you have any place of inflicting pains on them. And from the example that you gave, you understand, like maybe you are in a conference meeting with maybe your CEO of a company or something like that, and the CEO of that company says something to you, you're not going to put up your fist and be like, you know what, I want to fight you. You understand? So if you cannot do that, then why do it to your partner? So which means, looking at it, you understand, the perpetrator, they do know what they're doing. You understand? They know what they're doing. If you look at it, yeah.
And there will be some individuals who have mental capacity issues. For example, if you've got somebody who suffers with bipolar, somebody who has already got poor mental health in the form of schizophrenia or paranoid schizophrenia even, and those are mental health issues that may lead a person to behave in an abusive way, but also
Yeah.
those are also the mental health issues that can be treated. So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, those are individuals who need help.
Mm.
If if a person can't control how they behave in a boardroom, then you need
Yes.
to question if their mental capacity at that point.
Yeah, that's true. So if you can control how you behave in the boardroom, then you should be able to control however you behave
Absolutely,
in the house as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
that is a pretty good way of looking at it, really.
Yeah.
I really like that. So let's go now to my next question. There's a saying that says that people who are hurt, hurt people, hurt people. I don't know if you get that description. You understand? They say when some people say that some people say when they use the word hurt people, that it's more like it's a biggest misconception, how there. So I want to find out what can you say about this what they call it's misconception, but do you think it's misconception to you as well?
No, I don't think it's entirely misconceptional. I think, the idea that hurt people, there is
Mm,
some truth in that. Because again,
mm,
it's learned behavior. And secondly, it's projective
mm,
behavior. So an
yeah,
example is for let's take the boardroom example, that your boss says something to you in the middle of a board meeting. You're
yeah,
not happy with what has been said, but you can't exert that aggression in the boardroom, so you go home, you kick the
yes,
furniture, you swear at your wife, and you do whatever. um, and that's an
mm,
example of a hurt person causing hurt to another, even though it wasn't the
yeah,
victim's fault. And
mm-hmm,
similarly, so if you've been hurt in a relationship before, there is a possibility that you may project that resentment towards a new partner, even though it's not their fault. So it
mm,
might not necessarily be hurt people causing hurt in a physical violent way or anything like that, but it may
mm,
well be that you're projecting resentment and negative thoughts and negative emotions on your partner as a result of being hurt by somebody else in the past. It could also be the resent that you
mm,
have towards your parents. It could also be, resentment towards, not being able to have something as a provision, for example, children or finances, whatever
yeah,
it is. So, and this is where I think we have to look at a concept called psychodynamic.
yeah,
And psychodynamic is where you're looking at, the complete history and yeah, from birth to where they are now, and
yes,
what has led to them having certain thought processes. So
mm,
if we can put a lid on the issues that are bubbling up for a
yeah,
person and causing them to behave in a way that could be hurtful to another, then
mm,
actually there is room for closure, there's room for forgiveness, there's room for cognitive behavioral therapy to take place.
yeah,
And so, those hurt feelings can be dealt with in a constructive way, and so that you're not projecting hurt onto another. And so I don't think it's entirely unreasonable that the concept of hurt people being hurting others. I think
yeah,
there is some truth in it.
mm,
Pain will either do one of two things to you. Either it will turn you into a bitter person, or it
mm,
will turn you into a compassionate person.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. And so you will always have there will always be two sides to that coin. There will always be two schools of thought that, if you've experienced pain, you shouldn't inflict it on others. And then there are some people who will subconsciously or even unconsciously inflict pain on others because they felt it before.
yeah, yeah. I think I quite agree with you, because the thing is, if someone shows you love, you understand, maybe growing up, your parent, they're like doing all this lovey-dovey with you, they show you love most of the
Mm,
time, there is no way that when you grow up, you want to be like, start having hatred feelings toward other people, you understand? So the love
exactly.
that was being poured out to you growing up
Mm,
is definitely going to show in you when you grow older, you understand? So
that's right.
and I believe same applies to people who have been hurt, you understand? When you've been hurt,
Mm,
there's this bitterness and this anger in
mm,
you that at the maybe utterances of anyone. I mean, just whatever someone says, you understand? It might be something like, you know, other people will hear and they'll be like, oh, you got upset because of that, you understand? So maybe because of just whatever they said, it's just gonna like, you know, make you to flare up or something like that. I want to start reacting, you understand? So I do believe that in that too, you know. So yeah, you're right about that. Yeah. So and I think we're done with the topic of domestic abuse right now. So we're gonna go into marriage. So I want to find out. I want to find out from you, Seema. I know that you manage. What is it called? What is it? You have a company called Sweet Sensation. Is that or something like that, right?
Okay, so Sweet Sensations is actually not related to relationships or anything at all. I'm a chocolatier as well, so Sweet
Okay,
Sensations
okay.
is the chocolatier side of things. I work in partnerships. I have like my own movement called V2S Empowerment, which is to do with the domestic abuse training. But I also work in partnership with Harpal Singh Chatwal, who is the author of The First Slap. And he's a qualified and accredited psychotherapist, and we work together on projects about healthy relationships and promoting healthy relationships.
Wow.
So and I think it's like it's been a great balance, because it's kind of using my life experiences and his professional experiences. So you know, like he knows that I've been married for 21 years now, and we have a 19-year-old son. So you know, it's a case of kind of learning what leads to those successful marriages, and you know, accepting that it's not always a bed of roses. You know, marriage isn't about going on holidays and swanky restaurants. We really have to get out of this social media vortex that we live in, because it's a horrible place to be, where you scroll through Instagram or Facebook or whatever social media platforms that you're on, and you see this seemingly happy couple, you know, and it's like celebrating 3 years of marriage on Miami Beach. And what you don't know is behind that photo is before and after that photograph, this they had a toxic argument, fell out with each other, yet on Instagram they're all smiles. So for us, you know, we want to talk about some real basic, like, you know, healthy relationship nuggets, where we want to teach people to be happy internally and not just externally. And healthy relationship starts with being happy within yourself first. Even your partner cannot be responsible for giving you happiness. You have to be responsible for that. And when you're happy, your partner will be happy as well. If they can seek their own internal happiness at the same time, then you're both going to be happy people and rub off on each other. And so working on yourself is part of the work that Harbal and I do with individuals. We do it through through the professional side of things, that his expertise through psychotherapy, and some of it is through life coaching and life experience, you know, nuggets that we're willing to share. So yeah, that's what we are doing at the moment professionally.
Wow, that is really good. So it's like you wear so many hats there. You know, you are a homeless case worker, and look at what you're doing. And you know, how do you cope with all this? How do you manage all this?
I think it's because I mean, I have a supportive husband, which really helps. So, the sweet side of things is actually going to start to wind down now, because I'm actually going back to university myself to study.
Oh, wow, that's good. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you. So, really. Yeah, so with that happening in the background, we are going to wind down. You know, like you obviously you have to let go of one wonderful thing for another thing to commence. You know, it's the chocolatier side of the business. Interestingly, was very much an eye-opener in terms of how well my husband and I worked, my son and I worked together. What worked, it brought us together, you know, because it genuinely was a family-run business, and it brought us together in ways that I can't even describe. You know, one of us was responsible for the PR side of things. I was on production and actually making the sweets. my son would be responsible for packaging and graphics. My
Wow.
husband would take care of all the accountancy side of things. So we had to pull together as a team, and running a family business will either make you or break you as a family. It really does. But we had so much fun on the way. We got so much out of it as a family. We learned so much about each other, which we wouldn't have done had we not started the business.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, it's been a wonderful journey, but it's time to bring that to a close so we can start something new.
Oh wow, that's good. That's really good. You know what? I noticed that because I just deep into my guest what is called social media platform a lot. You understand? And I
Yeah.
noticed while digging, you know, to get my information, I I found out that in 2018 that you celebrated your 18 years of happily married to Mr. Beard. That's how you called it, right? So my question on that is, how has it been, and how does it feel like to be married for such a long time? And is that a secret? Seema, I don't want you to pretend. I don't want you to lie to me. Is that a secret to a long-lasting marriage?
You know what? Yes, I think there are some secrets there. And I think what I would like to say is, firstly, it's been an incredible journey. I got married a week after my 21st birthday, which is an
Oh
incredibly
my
young
God!
age to get married.
Wow! Yeah!
I had my son at 23.
Wow!
I think the secret for me is to grow with each other. You know,
Yeah!
we were an incredibly young family, and I won't lie, we've had our struggles. We really have.
Mm,
But what I will say is that in a healthy relationship, you will encourage each other to be the best version of yourselves.
mm,
You know, we've always encouraged each other to thrive in terms of our careers. We've always encouraged each other to thrive as individuals in terms of our own personal growth. And we've always kind of encouraged each other to kind of be good human beings, both to each
yeah.
other and to those
Mm,
externally as well. And I think
yeah.
the secret is to find what works within your own family.
Mm,
You know, we are very good as a family when it comes to talking about relationships with each other, relationships with others. We're very good about talking about things that affect us, whether, you know, being a homeless persons officer for this many years, you know, like being married for 21 and being working for local authorities for 15 years. For
mm,
15 years of my life, I've been exposed to what it's like to not be in a healthy relationship by the type of cases that I've worked with. So
yes.
to come home with, you know, of course you're going to come home with emotional baggage. You'll experience a level of emotions transferred from the victims of abuse that you've spoken to when you come home. And
Hmm.
what it does is that it grounds you and makes you feel very grateful for the fact
Yes.
that, actually, you know what, I'm so blessed to have a husband who supports me in X, Y, and Z way.
Yeah.
Those niggly little things, like he didn't load the dishwasher properly, or, you know, I don't like the t-shirt he's wearing today, then
Mm,
become so small in the grand scheme of things.
exactly.
So, and I think, you know, have your own love language is really important as well. I know that you must know Dana,
Yeah.
who talked about it as well, Dana Haslam. She talked about love languages, and I have to agree with it. It's such a beautiful thing to remember, is to have your own love language with each other.
Mm,
Um, your own little code words that only you as a family understand. My
mm.
husband and I have that. My son and I can communicate just through eye contact. We know exactly what each other's saying just through eye contact.
Wow.
And so have those little love languages. That is what is going to make your family special to you. And that's what's going to give you the culture, that loving culture within your own family. The same way that, you know, abuse is learnt behavior, love is also learnt behavior. So if
Mm,
you're loving
exactly.
and
Yeah.
you're compassionate towards each other, you're encouraging towards each other, you're bigging each other up, you're in, you know, bringing the best out in each other, then that is how you will project to the rest of the world as well.
Wow, that's good. I love the that you should have the love language. I love that, you know. So I really like that. So that thank you so much for that. So my next question is when looking for a spouse, because you've been in this thing called married for like 21 years. So when you're looking for a spouse, what are the most important things to look out for in a man
Okay.
or woman, you know? So
I think you need to sort of really dig deep and ask yourself how this person makes you feel.
hmm,
I think that is the most important thing. Interestingly enough, just today, a friend of mine runs a not-for-profit, like a dating, social media dating platform,
hmm,
and she put up a post where she was saying, "What is the one thing that you would not compromise on?"
hmm,
And her viewers, her audience responded, you know, with various answers such as, I wouldn't want my partner to drink. That's not something I'm willing to compromise on. I wouldn't want my partner to be a meat eater, or I wouldn't want my partner in, you know, for me, straight away, the whole thing was abuse. You know, there has to be a zero tolerance attitude to abuse.
yeah.
The one thing that I would not be willing to compromise on is how that person makes me feel.
Yeah,
You know, and if you make each other feel special all the time, if you make each other feel loved all the time and valued all the time,
mm,
then you know those are the attributes that you should be looking for. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely be mindful of narcissistic charmers who will switch on the charm to make you feel valued, loved, and special all the time, but
yeah,
then also switch over to narcissistic behaviors later on in the relationship. So please be open and vigilant about that as well, that the moment something doesn't feel right, trust your gut instinct,
mm,
is what I would say, so that
mm,
you're avoiding being into, you know, you're avoiding going through that cycle of abuse yourself. If
okay,
you feel that, you know, like, yes, in all relationships there are problems. When one of the things that you should look out for when you're sort of looking for a partner is how you handle disputes amongst each other, how you handle misunderstandings with each other, because that's what's going to give you an accurate understanding of what this person is likely to be like should
yeah,
something go pear-shaped in a relationship. Because let's face it, marriage isn't always a bed of roses. You are going to face difficulties. Life can change. Look at what happened with this coronavirus pandemic. With a click of the fingers, we were all sat at home with each other.
yeah, all up in each other's faces.
You know, we had three of us, you know, a 19-year-old trying to do his university work, my
Yeah,
husband and I trying to work from home from our dining table, you know, all in one under one roof. It can be tense,
I
it can be
know.
difficult.
Mm,
But how you handle those issues will be a reflection of your relationship going forward.
yeah,
So be in tune to what this person is like if you're 10 minutes late because you got stuck in traffic. Be in tune with this, what this person is like when you're not at your best, when you're perhaps feeling a little bit hormonal and, you know, just want to be left alone or whatever it is. You know, be in tune to how this person makes you feel.
mm,
If they are making you feel loved and they're making you feel valued, they're a keeper. But if they are not bringing the best out in you, then don't settle for anything less than anyone who will.
okay. So let me ask you now, Sima. Let's say during the time of courtship and everything like that, this partner that you intend to get married made you feel valuable. All the things that you just mentioned, they kind of exhibited it. You understand? It was right there. But after a few years down the marriage lane, you understand? All this thing kind of like just changed. The person just changed.
Mm.
What can you say about that?
I think I want to say that relationships evolve. That is a very common phenomenon where a person can make you feel valued and loved during courtship because they're trying to acquire you.
Yeah.
I know it's not a very nice word to use, but ultimately that's what you're trying to do with each other. You're trying to acquire each other's affection and each other's love for that period of time.
Yeah.
The same way that abuse has its kind of cycle, relationships do too. Healthy relationships have their own cycles as well.
Yes.
And it is, you know, it's not. I think you need to look at perspective when you're thinking about, okay, has this person, like, during courtship, they might sweep you off your feet and buy you roses on a regular basis, and take you shopping once a month to make you feel like $1,000,000, take you out for dinner and be the person who always pays, opens doors for you, and the rest of it. Okay. And we talked about love languages. I think if there's one thing that needs to filter through, irrespective of which life cycle you're on in a relationship, in which point of that relationship evolving, your love language needs to continue all the way through. And again, drawing back on my own experiences, I think when I first got married, I was the one who always wanted the affection and the hugs and the cuddles and the rest of it. And my husband, now the tables have completely switched, and I'm just like, let me sleep. And he's the one who now wants, you know, the affection and the cuddles a bit more. So relationships do evolve, and I think you need to kind of remember that. And, you know, just because the courtship style of making you feel loved and valued isn't there, look for other things in your relationship. Okay. One such thing is, in winter, my husband knows how much I hate scraping the ice off my car. The chill goes through my bones. He knows I hate it. Even if I'm wearing gloves, that scraping the ice and the snow off my car is the one thing that I dread every winter. Okay. But there are some mornings when he's got time and he does it for me. And it is the nicest feeling when you come downstairs to your car and you're like, yeah, exactly. And it's like, you know, there are certain jobs I don't like doing around the house, which he does for me. It's giving me the space to be able to work out even when he just wants to sit there and watch the TV, but I need the TV because I want to do my homework out. So, you know, he's valuing my space. He's making me feel special by taking the ice off my car or doing the jobs that I don't want to do. You know, he knows that that I will not get grumpy, but I'll have something to say if he eats my share of chocolate.
Chocolate.
So he'll do it deliberately. You know, we like it. And seeing as you're very good at looking through my Facebook, there is actually, you know, there's posts on there about you know, how like he's chased me around the house because he's trying to get a bite of the ice lolly because he's already eaten his and he wants mine too. So, you know, like find, you know, your love language will evolve, you know, your relationship will evolve, and what you had in your courtship might not be there in its old form, but it may have evolved into something else. And look for the positives in those, and that's what I would say.
Wow. Okay. That's good. You know what? Let me ask you this question now. See, you've been married for about 21 years now. You know, and I've heard couples who have been married for such a long time as well, and all of a sudden, you understand, they're like, you know what? I want to start taking care of me. You understand? I want it to be all about me right now, you know, and they just keep saying, I want out. But I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, because they will have like grown-up kids, maybe about 18, 19 or 20 years old kid, you understand? And this is a time for the kids to start learning from their parent, you understand? Because why? They are about to start stepping into a relationship as well, you know, start thinking about, you know, having a family and everything like that. But this is a time that the parent are like, you know what, I want out. I want to be on my own and everything like that. So it just surprises me that why wait for so long? Why wait for, because I believe, I don't know if I'm right on that, I believe that this is a time that you're becoming adult teenager, you know, I mean, your teenagers, this is the time that they need to start seeing, look at how you say your husband, you know, will start chasing after you in the house, you know, trying to take what is called your chocolate and stuff like that. So they want to start seeing all this, you understand? But this is a time that some parent, they'll be like, you know, I want out. But I'm thinking this is the time that this adult children, you understand, this is the time that they really need you. So why at this stage, why wait for so long? Why at this? And also, this is a thing that most people don't realize, you understand? When they say that they want her, maybe because they want to go and start doing whatever they want, you understand? At the end of the day, I realize that whoever they try to have an affair with, maybe 2-3 years down the line or down the lane, the person will leave them. So they will now start living on their own. You understand? And this is not the time that you should be living up by yourself. You understand? This is the time that you need to start gelling with
Yeah,
your husband or the wife of your youth yourself, because you guys know each other. And all these people
exactly.
who says they won't have, you understand? Some of them, they have maybe underlying issue. You understand? Because I'll give you an example. I heard about someone, you understand? He complained that his children are all grown up, but the thing is, the mother now kind of babysits the children. You understand? So this guy works as a taxi driver, and he drives the taxi at night. So his complaint was, oh, you know what, my grandchildren, they are always making noise at the middle of the night when I come back home to start resting. So he decided to go and rent an apartment somewhere. You will not believe, 3-4 years later, this man when he left the house to move to another house. The wife was just trying his cell phone, trying to find out how he's doing and everything like that. When the wife did not, so the wife left a message on his voicemail and everything like that. So when the wife did not get a call back from him, the wife now decided to go to the apartment that he rented. On getting to the apartment was locked. You understand? So she tries to knock on the door, try to open it. She couldn't open it. She now has to call 999. So when they got there, they broke the door, and guess what? This guy was gone. This guy
Oh no.
was gone. You understand? So I'm
Yeah.
thinking, why does some people decide that after 15, 20 years, why thinking like you want out? Why
Yeah.
can't you try to
I think,
make things work?
yeah, and I would always encourage people that have been in long-term relationships that as long as the love is still there,
Mm,
that you should try and get some level of relationship counseling or marriage counseling. I would not sort of encourage anyone to remain in a loveless or an abusive marriage.
mm.
That's a different subject that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But where, let's remember that it took two of you to build the life that you have today.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah.
And why do we automatically assume that just because we want to look after ourselves, do something for ourselves? One such example is me going back to finish my education.
Yeah.
I didn't go to university sort of when I should have.
Mm.
And so I'm choosing to go back now. Ironically, my son and I will probably graduate around the same time.
That's a good thing. It's good.
um, exactly. But
Mm,
like I'm not going to turn around and sort of say that because this is an ambition, that I have. Many would think that oh, I need to be on my own to do this.
mm,
And there are lots of us who I thought about traveling sort of, taking a year out and just traveling the world. But you
mm.
don't have to end a relationship in order for you to be you. I
Yes.
think if you have love in a relationship, then again, it boils down to you bringing the best out in each other. And the
Mm.
same way that relationships evolve, people evolve too. So let's face it, none of us are the 18-year-old versions of ourselves.
Oh no.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're evolved human beings. We've grown, we've self-developed, we've had good times and bad times, and we have our own very sort of distinct characteristics now.
Yeah.
So what better than to share that with somebody who's been your companion? When I've had a companion in my life since the age of 21,
Yeah.
and if there's one thing that I have noticed is that your friends will come and go.
Mm.
Even your family might not always stick by you, but your companion will always stick by you. And
Yes.
yes, you're right that at the time when I've got a 19-year-old son now, and he's embarking on his own university life and looking at relationships and whatnot. I would want to set a good example for him as an
Exactly.
adult,
Exactly.
in terms of what healthy relationships consist of. And I've
Mm.
always said to him that a relationship should not feel like an emotional chore. It should feel like there's not enough road ahead of you to drive through,
Mm.
because you want to spend so much of your lives with each other.
Yeah.
And when you have that feeling that you just want to make the most of every day with each other, you shouldn't need to feel you should. And often it's a byproduct of somebody going through a midlife crisis.
Mm.
And so, you know, things like marriage counselling and relationship counselling can really help out where people are on the cusp of feeling the way that they are.
Yeah.
Perhaps somewhere along the line, their partner may have made them feel sort of devalued or unloved or unworthy of something or another, and don't even realise that that's how they've made their significant other feel.
Mm.
So through sort of counselling and relationship counselling, through working on yourself and working on what you want from each other, you can actually sort of, you know, stop yourself from going over that line of wanting a divorce.
Yeah.
I am aware of some individuals where they've actually gotten a divorce very quickly.
Mm.
And sort of, you know, like whilst the children are young, in, you know, within that sort of first 10 to 15 years of their marriage, or even earlier, and then later on in life they get back together again.
Wow. Wow.
You know, I mean, nobody knows me. No, I would even go as far as saying that not even my parents know me as well as my partner knows me.
Yes. Yeah. Because
So,
you've
you
been
know,
with him like all your life, you understand? So
absolutely, yeah. You know, so so yeah, you know, like I would say, work on your relationships. No relationship is easy.
no.
No relationship is easy. Every marriage comes with its ups and downs, and,
Yes.
you know, good times and hard times, but you grew through all of that together. Would you not want to grow old with that person? You know, the only instances where I would not suggest that is, like we said earlier, that if the relationship is dysfunctional or abusive.
Yes.
But if you
Yes.
still love each other, then, you know, accept that even at midlife point, blips happen in a relationship. Let's go for counselling. Let's get the marriage counselling. Let's talk about how we feel, and actually look at those issues to see if we can be better versions of ourselves, both individually and together.
Yeah. Yeah. You see, the excuses that I heard most of the time from people who are always using this word is because they said, I'm not in love with him anymore. I'm not in love with her anymore. So I want to find out that, is it possible for you to stay in love with your partner for forever, or is love something that you have to work on, you understand, to remain in love with that person?
I think any relationship is something that requires work to be done. And what I would say is, you know, we've talked about relationships evolving, people evolving, and love evolves too.
Mm.
You know, like you may not feel the same level of I'm in love with my partner that
Yeah.
you felt when you were courting, when you were dating. You
Yeah.
may not even feel the same I'm in love with my partner from when you had the children together and when you got married. But there's a different type of love.
Mm.
And I think what we often fail to recognize is how love does evolve.
Yeah.
And just because that love is not the same, it doesn't mean that it's not love.
Yes.
And I think that is what we need to kind of remember, that we need to I've been looking at a lot of sort of self-work books myself as well. And one of the things that I'm absolutely in love with in terms of the thought concept is Choosing Love Over Fear by Gabrielle Bernstein.
Okay.
And you know, she writes about sort of you know, choosing love over fear. That
Mm.
even if you were to choose love, that if you were to find things that you could love about your partner, then love will be your natural state.
Mm.
And love is an abundant feeling. So just because you know, love your friends, or you love your children, or you love the rest of your family, it's
Mm.
not like a cup of water that if you stop spreading it amongst 10-15 people, you're going to have less.
Yes. Yes.
The
Yeah.
more you can make love your natural state of being, the more love you'll feel for others around you. And that even includes your partner that you've been with for
Yeah.
however long, umpteen years.
Mm.
So I do think that actually, if you can make it your natural state, and
Yeah.
if you can look for things to love, then you can love them for the long run.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Well, my
What
other
ends up
question.
happening?
What did he say?
Sorry, what I was going to say is, what ends up happening is, as we grow older, it's very easy for us to think, oh, You know what? I don't like the way he eats his food, or I don't like the way he snores.
I heard that all the time. Maybe
You
oh,
know,
it's not too much. Where it doesn't close the bathroom, the toilet seat whenever he uses the bathroom or something like that. You know,
yeah. And
and
we all, as individuals, have those little nuances that we don't like about our partner. But then that doesn't mean you fall out of love with each other. It's just one of those things, isn't it, that
yeah.
you learn to live with.
Yeah, yeah. So you're absolutely right on that. And one thing that I've also heard and also read about is in a relationship, and if you are in a relationship and your spouse have never told a lie, you understand? I've never disrespected you, and I've never said any horrible things to you, that you need to just pinch yourself and just ask yourself if you are in the right relationship, because I heard that things like that are bound to happen, but the thing is you have to always exercise the spirit of forgiveness. If not, there's
Yeah,
no way that the marriage will work. I want you from your own
yeah.
experience, you
And
understand?
I agree with that. I
Yeah,
agree with that. I think, as somebody who explores domestic abuse on a daily basis,
yeah,
I what I will say is that no relationship is perfect, and
yeah,
we have to be kidding ourselves if you think that there are always going to be times where you might not be entirely honest with your partner.
yeah.
Those pair of shoes, are they new? No, darling, I've had those for months.
Or you know what, you buy something and you just maybe hide it up in the garage or something like that, or hide it under
Exactly.
your
Or like
closet.
exactly, or like, the umpteen bags that are in your boot because
Oh
you
yeah.
don't want them to see them. But yeah, I mean, like there is always going to be issues. You're going to have disagreements, you're going to disrespect each other.
Yeah.
And I don't think people consciously do that. Sometimes
Mm.
it's subconscious and sometimes it's unconscious. But I go back to the time when we were talking about how you resolve those issues between each other speaks volumes. So you
Yes.
can either resolve that with love, or
Mm.
you can resolve that with resent and bitterness. And
Yes.
we know that if you resolve it with love and compassion, then you're likely to resolve it very quickly. My son always laughs at us when we have an argument, because we'll have like the most heated argument. We might say some nasty things to each other, and then 5 minutes later, we're friends again.
Yeah, that's what
You know,
relationship should be
but
about.
exactly. And I think if there's one thing that I've always believed in, and I remember this was something that a very old person in a care home once told me.
Yeah.
Um, and they said to me, never let a son go down on an argument.
It's in the Bible as well. That's in the Bible. Yeah.
Yeah. So they
Yeah.
said to me, never let the sun go down on an argument. And I think that
Yes.
is so true, because how many times do you hear of couples saying that they just turn their backs to each other in bed and just that's it? And then the
Mm.
next day, the resent carries on and it can grow,
Yes.
it can fester, and it
Mm.
manifests into that whole tension building phase that we talked about in the cycle of abuse.
Yeah.
So I think, the most important thing is, choose love over fear. What are you really scared of?
Mm.
Are you scared of telling your partner how you really feel?
Yeah.
Because if you are, then there's a problem with your relationship.
Mm.
If you want to be able to tell, you have to learn to be honest with your partner as well.
Mm.
What is it you're fearing there? If it's an issue of, I don't want to tell my partner I want to have a change of career because I fear he's not going to approve of it, or I don't want to tell my partner that actually I don't want to wear jeans today, I want to wear a dress, he might not
Mm.
approve of it. Then
Mm.
actually, don't live in that fear. Be honest with your partner about what you want, and that will then help you to then evolve your relationship to a more natural state of appreciating and loving each other more.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that. You know what? We're gonna be wrapping up soon. Like I said, I don't want to take much of your time, but I think I have. I really
No, it's all good.
apologize for that. No, okay, this is what I want. this is what I want. I want you to, I want to find out if you have any words for couple out there who are probably on the verge of seeking divorce, and just to let them know the effects of divorce on their children, and their finance and also their health. You understand? I just want you to just, if you have any word out there that you can just give to people, because right now, like we said, we are in the pandemic stage right now, and we are all up in
Yeah.
each other's spaces, even though the lockdown is easing up a little bit, but it has not
Mm,
completely eased up, you understand? So we are still in each other's spaces, you understand? Like you said,
yeah.
we're like maybe sitting down on the dining table together, looking at each other's faces and everything like that. So, and some people,
Yeah.
they are now seeing the things that was eaten before, you understand? So I want you to put the word out there for people who are like, you know what,
Yeah.
I'm not in love anymore with my wife or with my husband, and you know what, I want house, I want out and everything like that. I want to start taking care of me. I just want you to just put
Mm.
that word out there for people and just know what effect it's going to have on their children, on their health, and also financially what it's going to the impact it's going to have on them.
Yeah, I mean, financially is the easiest one to talk about, especially if you're both dependent on each other's income. You're losing a lifestyle. You're losing a lifestyle that you both worked hard for.
Mm.
And in terms of the impact on children, it can have detrimental effects on them. But you're splitting their loyalties between two loved ones, and
Mm.
you are supposed to be the carers and the protectors for these children. And even if you're seeking divorce on grounds of not being in love or whatever it is, and there's no abuse involved, it doesn't mean that your children will not suffer the psychological impact of parents being separated from each other and
Yeah.
split loyalties, and
Mm.
also end up being in this like the tug of war between parents and loyalties, and which parent gets the most custody, or it's not really called custody anymore, but parental arrangements and the rest of it.
Yeah.
So that think about that, and if really dig deep and ask yourself the reasons for wanting a divorce.
Mm.
Really dig deep and ask yourself, what are the reasons? Because it's no easy step, and it's unfortunate that divorce has become so much more the get out,
Yes.
and again, these are words of wisdom that have come from people who are much older than me. And I did a lot of work during times when I was supporting people in temporary accommodation when through my career, and worked with a lot of people in sheltered homes that are elderly, and one of the things that they also always said to me is, in our day, if something was broken, we fixed it. We didn't just go out and buy a new one.
Mm.
And the same is for relationships, that if something is not working in your relationship, you sit down and you work it out and you try to fix it.
Yes.
You don't just go out and get a new husband. You
Yeah.
don't just up and leave one life to start another.
Yeah.
And if there is love in your relationship and the two of you deep down really, really want to make it work, then get the help so that you can make it work.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much for that. And the one thing that I heard you say right now is, you said if something is broken, you have to try to fix it. What do you think it's too late to fix anything in a relationship?
The only thing that you can't fix in a relationship is abuse.
Okay.
If the person is, if a person is not willing to accept that their behavior is abusive,
Mm.
if a person is causing you harm,
Mm.
and if the person is causing your children harm, then that is the one thing that should not be tolerated, and you should walk away from it.
Wow, wow. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everything else, if a person, even in an abusive relationship, if the abusive partner acknowledges and is genuinely willing to change, is
Yes.
genuinely willing to look at their own thought processes and their own behavioral patterns, then even that, there's a possibility that it can be fixed.
Mm.
But as a victim of abuse, you must not tolerate abuse go towards you of any sort.
Yes.
So your first your first option should be to talk about it openly.
Mm.
And that is the only thing in a relationship. An unhealthy relationship is the only thing that can't be fixed.
Good.
When things go wrong in a healthy relationship, it can be fixed.
Wow, that's good. Good. And I also like when you said that instead of seeking for divorce, you need to think deep on why you want to do it. Because the thing is, when someone is thinking about divorce, you understand, they hardly have the time to sit down and be like, why do I even want to divorce this guy? What are the things that he's done for me? You understand? The thing that is always like on their head is usually, it's bad. She's bad. She's not good. She's not showing me love, or he's not showing me love. So when you use that word, I think that's an appropriate word, because the thing is, most people, when they're going through stages like that, they hardly sit down and think deep, about the consequences, everything.
And we're very quick to try and seek happiness in our partner or in others.
Yes.
And that's one thing that we have to stop doing. We really need to sort of start seeking happiness from within, and actually being happy a state of our own mind, rather than sort of depending on our partner. Okay, yes, of course, being around your partner should always make you happy, but don't make them responsible for your happiness. Be responsible for your own happiness, and if you're happy, you'll spread happiness to those around you.
That's good. That's true. That's true. That's really true. Right now, I want you to provide our viewers the resources that are available for victims. And also, I don't want us to forget the perpetrators, because the thing is, I'm thinking, I'm not in their mind, you understand? But I'm thinking a lot of them, you understand? They might be like, what? I need help. I just want somewhere that I can get help. So what are the resources that are available for domestic abuse victims and also the perpetrators?
Yeah, okay. So for victims of abuse, I would say that the websites that I mentioned earlier, Refuge and Women's Aid, are a national resource in terms of online access to knowledge and understanding of what abuse is. They have helpline numbers that are free phone numbers as well. And if you haven't got the opportunity to ring those numbers from your own home, try and do it from a friend's house, or try and do it. Boots is running an initiative at the moment where if you're a victim of domestic abuse, you can go and use their consultation rooms to actually have the privacy to ring either the police or these numbers to get help. You just need to go in and say that, look, I'm experiencing domestic abuse, could I please use your consultation room? And they should allow you to use their consultation room to make those phone calls, so you don't have to suffer in silence. Locally, you should always find out who your domestic violence service providers are in your area. Every local authority has their own service providers. For example, if you live in some parts of the London area, like Harrow, sort of Brent, Barnet areas are covered by Solace and Hestia, which are major providers of domestic abuse services in the London area. Deep Hall is another one. There's various different charities that do that, but find out who your local services are, because the national services will provide you with support over the phone. The local services will provide you with in-depth support that is specific to your case. They'll also be able to guide you to any other services that you need. For example, if you're homeless as a result of domestic abuse, they'll help you with your approach to a local authority as homeless. If it's social services you need because your children might be in danger, or you have no recourse to public funds but there's children involved, then you can be referred into social services. Your children's schools is a great place to ask for help as well. They are safeguarding trained to be able to spot domestic abuse and understand the impact it has on children and their education. Your GP is a great place to talk about the psychological and the emotional effects that you might be feeling as a result of domestic abuse. And if you need to then be referred into mental health services, then that can be done. And most importantly, if you are in danger, you are a victim of violent crime or sexual abuse or physical abuse that is causing you harm or injury, and even if it's not causing you injury, but you are being subjected to physical harm, that is a crime. You must report it to the police. So those are the resources that are available if you are a victim of domestic violence. If you are a perpetrator and the realization has dawned upon you that something's not right in your behavioral patterns, then Relate is a fantastic charity to work with.
Okay.
Relate, and Menkind. Menkind specialize in support for male victims of domestic abuse, as well as providing training to men who could be perpetrators of abuse. Relate does the same sort of thing. It provides training and opportunities to understand relationships and healthy relationships without being aggressive and violent. And also the community mental health teams, wellbeing teams. You can be asked to be referred into those for counselling, cognitive behavioural therapy, dialogue-based therapy, to really understand your own behaviour patterns and work on constructive ways on you working on yourself to change and alter those behavioural patterns as well.
Okay.
So there is help available for both.
Okay.
The Freedom course, for anyone who has been a victim of domestic abuse and can't seem to get closure on it, is also fantastic. It's a 12-week course, helps you to understand narcissistic behaviours, helps you to understand abusive behaviours, so that going forward, if you find yourself wanting to be in a relationship again, you know what you're looking for.
Okay, okay, that's really good. Thank you so much for providing that information. I think I'm gonna have to contact you later so I can get everything and put it on the maybe like when I do the write up, I'll just put it under it or something like that. Yeah, well, yeah. So I want to say thank you so much for honoring the invitation to come on this show. But one last thing that I want you to do right now is I just wanted to share an encouraging word. I want you to base your word on domestic abuse and also on marriage. You understand? Just any words that you can just put out there for people right there, just for them to just know. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that I say to all of my loved ones is this, okay?
Yeah.
Know your worth. Know
Mm.
your worth, always.
Yeah.
If you value yourself, then other people around you will pick up on those vibes.
Yes.
If you love yourself, then you will be able to pour love into others.
Mm.
And when I say know your worth, that also applies to you being in an abusive relationship or you being in a healthy relationship.
Yes.
If you're in a healthy relationship, you'll understand what your worth is to the person that loves you. And if you're in an abusive relationship, you'll understand that you deserve not to be in an abusive relationship. Know your worth and get yourself away from that toxicity.
Okay.
So knowing your worth is the one nugget that I would like to would like everyone to take away with you. And finally, like, I will go back to Gabrielle Bernstein's quote: choose love over fear, always.
Okay. Okay. Wow, wow. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful time, that I've spent with you today. So I'm really, really grateful, and I'm so glad for all the information that you pour out there for people, you understand? So thank you so much for everything that you do, and I wish you the best of best things in life and everything that you set your mind to. Okay, thank you so much, okay? And yeah, all right, take care now, okay?
You
All right.
too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.